During this video class, we're going to cover everything there is to know about structuring your organization the best way possible. Some videos you'll want to watch in preparation and just to understand better how structure works is going to be your title video, meaning understanding how do you actually get promoted from agent to field trainer to senior field trainer to sales director to regional, and so forth. Also, you want to understand how sponsor placement works because oftentimes you're actually going to use sponsor placement as part of building your organization. Now, something else that's really critical in when you're building and structuring your organization is to understand that sponsoring a lot of people is very, very valuable because that's what's really going to create income, because the way the compensation plan is set up, it rewards you on your personal lineage, meaning the people that you sponsor and anybody connected to them. So the more people you sponsor, the more income you have available to you to earn. But then at the same time, you have depth. And you want a lot of depth too, because depth creates stability. So when you're building your organization, in other words, you're going to go out, and this is you right here, and you definitely want to go out and sponsor a lot of people. And if you look at sponsoring this way, you're bringing on new agents, and that's great. That's what you want to do. But you don't want to have your organization structured like this because, as you can see, this is a very wide organization, meaning that with all these people to have to work with on your front level, it's a lot more challenging because if you're over here and you're spending quite a bit of time with this person and this person and this person, well, what's happening to the folks over here? So it just makes it a little more challenging. And I kind of use the analogy of, like, imagine a tree. If a tree had a lot of roots, but all the roots were on the surface of the ground, so every one of these was a root, let's say, and it had no depth to it, you could just walk over to the tree and just push it over because what would really be holding it firm and stable in the ground? But if you took those roots and you drove them deep, let's say you only had 5 roots, but those roots went 20, 30, 40, 50 yards deep, well, you couldn't knock that over at all. Nothing could knock that over. And so that's how you want your business to be built. You want to have the opportunity to benefit from all the people you sponsor, but at the same time, you want to be able to drive it deep to create a lot of stability within your organization. So as you can see, I'm gonna show you how you would, because you might say, well, I've got all these people I'm sponsoring, and it's great if you can do that, but how do I handle structuring my organization? Very, very important. And a simple approach to doing this is to understand what you're trying to achieve. So if you're an agent, well, your first goal is going to be to get to the position of field trainer. And so you got to know, as a field trainer, I've got to go out and have 2 teams to qualify as a field trainer. And so that's your focus. Even if you are sponsoring more than 2 people, and this is why you got to understand how a sponsor placement works, because as you sponsor a lot of people with sponsor placement, you have the ability to condense your organization down to the amount of teams that's going to provide you the best benefit and the most stability as you build your business. So oftentimes people get caught up in just volume. So they'll look at a title and say, I need 1,600 in volume. I need 5,000 in volume. I need 10,000 in volume. I need 25,000 in volume, 50,000 in volume, 100,000 in volume to hit the various titles. And of course, you do need that. That's part of your qualification. But what's even more important is the structure. I would take structure over volume any day, because when you start to have really good structure, your volume is going to come anyway, and you're going to achieve not only higher titles faster, but you're also going to be able to maintain them a whole lot better and then get to the next level, because you're going to have more people that are solid in the business helping you to get there. So we're going for field trainer. Well, you want to stay within 2 teams until you get it done. But you see, once you become a field trainer, the next level up is senior field trainer. And to get to senior field trainer, you got to go from 1,600 up to 5,000. So there's no sense of going wider than 2 until you're at least a senior field trainer, or at least you're doing enough business. Let's say you're working towards sales director where you need 3 teams. But keep in mind that are you taking on a third team too soon, to whereas it's taking you away from giving your time and attention to making sure these first 2 teams are, on their own, that they can do some things without you. Because remember, let's say over here is team 1, team 2, and team 3. Well, if you're over here and team 1 is still kind of working, they're relatively new, and let's say over here this team only has $1,000 worth of volume, and let's say team 2 over here has $4,000 worth of volume, which is doing decent, and now you're a senior field trainer because you have those 2 teams. So oftentimes people go, oh man, I've got 2 teams and I'm a senior field trainer now, and next step is sales director, and they immediately want to go and start a 3rd team. But we have to realize that you still need to be a sales director another $5,000 in business. So before you run over and get a 3rd team, why not solidify your first 2 teams to get closer to that 10,000? Because if you understand the minimum requirement of a sales director, you only need $1,000 in each team minimum to get promoted. So why not spend more time in this team and get this up here to, let's say, 4,000 in business? See, what if we got this to 4,000? Or what if we got this to 5,000? And what if this team over here was doing 4,000? So you had 5,000, you had 4,000, and then all you had to do was go over here and get 1,000, and now you would have sales director. But not only would you have sales director, but you would have a growing business. See, next month you wouldn't necessarily be scrambling all over the place trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I've got a 2,000 over here, and I got 4,000 over here, and this one's short. And now you're finding yourself what I call is like spinning plates. And if you would imagine, if you take a plate, put it on a stick, if you've ever seen that done, and somebody spins a plate, well, when they're focused on one plate, it's not that difficult, huh? But now all of a sudden you take on a second one, and you got to spin that one. You got 2 is going to be harder than 1, isn't it? And then if you take on a 3rd and you're spinning that plate, now you've got to spin that plate, get it going. Oh, what's happening over here? This one might be wobbling. You got to get that spinning. And then you got to get the next one spinning and the next one spinning. So the more sticks with plates you have, the more they can start going like this if they're not solid and stable. Meaning if you don't have other people on that team that can also help you to spin the plate. You don't want to be the only one spinning plates. You want to be developing the folks on your team to help you to build a very solid team. Because you got to think about this business long term. You got to think big picture. I hope that's what you're really working towards, is to be here long term and to really benefit from building a solid and stable business. It's not about rushing to the next title. Now, don't get me wrong. Do you want to be a senior field trainer quicker? Yes. You want to be a sales director as fast as possible? Of course. But you don't want to rush, though, and miss key steps or make mistakes or not build your business correctly and not structure it correctly to the point where you also find yourself having to rebuild, or you're finding yourself having to work way harder than you would have if you would have structured your organization correctly. So always think, stay in the amount of teams, the amount of legs that you need until you're going to move up or get closer to the next level. So for instance, once you get to sales director, and now you're striving for regional sales director, you're still going to stay in 3 teams. Why? Because you don't need to go beyond that. I'll have sometimes folks that will have, let's say, for instance, they may have a team that's really running away, that's doing some great business, and that happens sometimes. You could have one team that goes out and is doing a ridiculous amount of business. So let's say over here you're a sales director, and you may have way more than 10,000 in volume. You might have somebody over here, let's say team 1, they're over here, they're doing $25,000 in business. I mean, for instance, they could be going out and even they might be a regional sales director themselves. That can happen. And with sponsor placement, somebody could have placed somebody underneath you as well. And over time, as they were building that team for themselves, and it happened to be under you, So let's say somebody above you, and again, if you watch the sponsor placement video, all those intricate details will be explained how that works. But the reality of it is, if they were to place a team underneath you and over time it developed into that, and you had the volume of 25,000, and because of that, let's say you were able to go out and do 2,000 in this team and 2,000 in this team, and you were able to have all the rest of the appropriate qualifications, and because of this volume, you were able to become a regional sales director yourself. You might think, oh, wow, I'm a regional sales director. Man, next step, executive sales director. But you got to understand, before you would go out and take on a fourth team, which is what a executive sales director would do, why would you consider that? It wouldn't matter, in my opinion, if this team over here had already 50,000 in business. Because before you take on a fourth team, even though you have the volume to be an executive sales director, 50,000, you only have 2,000 and 2,000. You need 4,000 minimum in this team, 4,000 minimum in this team, and you would need 4,000 minimum in your fourth team. So while you're running to start a fourth team, these teams aren't even that mature. They're not even that developed. You'd be better off spending your time and establishing team 2 and team 3, being aggressive in those teams, because they still need your help. They still need your assistance. They need you to do many aspects of the business with them. Maybe that's doing overviews, three-way calls, conference calls, and assisting them in day-to-day of doing their FES career. So if you run off here, what is it doing? It's basically diminishing your time. It's diminishing your effort in these other teams that need your help. So it doesn't make sense to start a fourth team until you have team 2 and team 3 really solid. These teams should be doing $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 in business. Get them solid. And what will happen if you do it this way? In this exact example, if you work team 2 and team 3 and you develop these teams up to where you're looking at, they have 4,000, they have 7,000, maybe they have 10,000, maybe you have a sales director. You do that over here, 4,000 to 7,000 or 10,000. You see, now you go and start spending time in your fourth team. But you've got this team 2 and team 3. They're doing things for themselves. See, they're able to do their own three-way calls. They're able to do their own overviews. They're able to do some of the things you were doing for them, because maybe they're a minimum of senior field trainer, but maybe a sales director. Well, that person could step up. They got good things going on. Now you can go over here to team 4, and I'm not saying you're going to ignore team 2 and 3. I'm not saying you're not going to watch what they're doing and assist them and coach them, but the amount of time that you have to dedicate to team 2 and team 3 is certainly a lot less. You could spend way more of your time in team 4, which means you're going to get to the minimum requirement of $4,000, for example, to be able to go executive sales director a lot faster. But what else did you do other than become an executive sales director in this example? You also positioned yourself to be a vice president much faster, because now you're not working 3 teams at the same time trying to get those up to 10,000. You've already got them there or very close to it. And now again, you're able to spend your time equally without having to be all thrust into saving a team or working, desperately in a sense, which is something you don't want to do. You want to work it piece by piece by piece so that it builds a solid foundation as you're doing it. And that's really how you structure your organization when you get up to ESD. Now the bottom line is you're in 4 teams. Now, what's the next step? Vice president. What do you need to be a vice president? 4 teams. So you would stay in 4 teams, and think about it. You would stay in 4 teams, for a while, because you don't have to get promoted or go wider, meaning go to 5 teams, until you're striving to get to regional vice president, which is 250,000 in volume. So once again, stay in 4 teams until you get close to that mark. When you start getting up to maybe 225, and so unless all of your volume again is heavy in one team, then you're not even looking at the volume. You're looking at building balance in your team. See, I've been doing this for quite some time, and I can tell you, I've seen plenty of cases where people have the volume to achieve higher titles, but their challenge is their lack of structure, the lack of balance in their teams. And I always say, you know, I understand why people want to rush to the next title. I understand why people want to have a title. I mean, to be recognized for a high level of achievement is exciting. To have people to know that you've achieved those great levels, it's all great. But think in terms of building it to the point where you're going to have such an amazing business, and you won't have to worry down the road if you build it correctly, because you will have not only the income from sponsoring people, but you're going to have incredible stability from building deep and having those organizations working on their own. And that's what you want, to develop your team so they can do it on their own. So you can step back and say, hey, even if I don't work anymore, I'm still going to get a substantial paycheck every week from the organization that I develop. So just to review, you start out, base it on the titles. You're going for field trainer, stay in 2 teams. When you're going for senior field trainer, stay in 2 teams. And get yourself up to $7,500, $8,000, $10,000, depending on how much volume is on one team. So it really always depends on how your volume is spread out. I mean, obviously, if you've got 5,000 one team and 4,000 another team, well, it's obvious you're going to take on a third team. You can do that because you should go sales director. But if you have one team that has 10,000 or 12,000, and your second team is struggling to even get to 1,000, let's get that team really solid so that it takes care of itself. So that, again, you're not just focused. Think 2 titles ahead. So as you're doing it, don't just think of the next title. Think about the title after that, because you don't want to be spending your time only just requalifying and working to just requalify your title that you have and requalify your title that you have and requalify the title you have. You want to get to the title you have and already be in a position to be focused on the next title. And you do that by really structuring your organization properly. So stay in 2 teams till you get close to sales director, then take on a third team. Stay in 3 teams until you're passing regional sales director, until you're upwards of $40,000, $45,000 in volume. You're getting close to executive sales director. If you've got the balance, then you take on your 4th team to get that minimum requirement of 4,000. And then you're going to stay in 4 teams for quite a long time, all the way up, as I said, you're talking about getting a couple $100,000 in volume, 225. And that's when you'll need to take on a 5th team as you're going for regional vice president. And after that, once you're in 5 teams, you stay in 5 teams for the rest of your career. There's just no reason to go wider than that, because you get paid just as much money by sponsoring people and placing them on different teams that you already have than going wider. So you're not going to get paid more money by taking on more people and going wider. You're just taking on more work. So stay within 5 teams once you get there, and then after that, build deep, deep, deep. Look to balance out your teams and be thankful for the teams that are taking off and running on their own. I always find it entertaining when people have folks on their team that are doing a great job, and maybe they want to be just, hey, I got it type of thing. I can make it happen. And if you got people like that and they want to run, let them run. And focus on the teams that you need to focus on so that you can build a very, very solid and stable business. So that's how structure works. This is another one of those areas that the folks above you, the leaders above you, understand this. They can help you with this, and you want to communicate with them about this, because the last thing you want to do is have so much width and be so wide too early, because you're going to find yourself maybe missing opportunities for promotions, missing opportunities that would lead to a much more solid and stable business. So communicate with your leaders so they can make sure you're structured properly. But definitely sponsoring people is an awesome thing to do. Then we just got to figure out how to consolidate those people, and you'll learn that from watching the sponsor placement video. So obviously, you want to get promoted. We want you to get promoted. And the best thing to do is to structure it wisely so that ultimately you will build a very solid, stable, long-term, successful business.